about lag. I never have to worry about speed on my end or quality of image or quality of audio. The working from home or from your business with Ting makes life very, very easy, and it makes those types of events very, very smooth. So with that, we just want to say thank you to Ting. You can go to ting.com/Sandpoint. If you don't have Ting yet, type in your address there. It'll tell you if Ting's in your area or not. If not, pre-register. You'll save $200 off of the installation when it shows up in your neck of the woods, which they're planning on continuing to grow their footprint here in the area. I also want to say thank you to Bonner Community Housing Agency. We're doing some housing episodes dealing specifically with housing. BCHA has done a great job hosting not only the location for this podcast, but they've done a great job of making sure that we have everything that we need as we move forward in the podcast itself. So thank you to BCHA. Thank you to Ting, our sponsors. With that, we are going to jump right in to episode 17. Well, thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having us.
It's good to have you, Sandi. Karita, glad you're with us.
Yes.
We've been going. I think you're episode 17. So we are doing weekly episodes here and trying to get people in and just have conversations.
We're 17.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's a good number.
Yeah,
it's a good number. We've got a real goal for conversation, developing community, and celebrating. Right? We want to celebrate the good. We want to celebrate all the things that are worth celebrating. And right now, we're in the midst of the coronavirus and all of the craziness going on with that. So I did disinfect the studio prior to you coming, just because I want to be respectful of where everybody's at.
That is nice of you.
Yeah, well, don't there shouldn't be any dust on anything. So, we both started our shows almost identically at the same time.
Yeah,
and
we did.
I love to get to know you two a little bit better and let our viewers get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
We want to champion the great things that you guys are doing. And so it's awesome to have you on the show. So,
Thank
Sandi, the floor is yours. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I am a member of the community for about 27 years in the Sandpoint area. And I grew up in San Jose, California, and my parents moved up here when I was 13. They moved up to Heron, Montana.
Okay.
They moved from the middle of the city to a field, a meadow. And they were really the original, the description that I've heard of the Redoubt movement. They were the original, escape to God's country, get away from the government before there was a name for it.
Yeah.
That was us back in the day. And
Well, they used to be called hippies.
It used to be called punk rock when I was growing up.
Yeah.
That was
Like,
run away from the government. Punk rock.
Yep, I was part of that. And then as an adult, I've lived over here. So I'm from San Jose, I'm from Heron, and I'm from Sandpoint.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's great.
so I've been here my whole adult life. And I have 4 kids of my own.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then I'm in a combined family with. He has 4 kids.
Wow.
Our oldest 4 are on their own. Actually, our oldest 5 are out on their own now. So we
that's
just
awesome.
have the 3
That's great.
youngest at home.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and I had a career in human resources up to about a year and a few months ago. And then I stepped away from that to try and get some formal education under my belt.
Good.
I started I jumped out of childhood into adulthood and started a family. And so now I'm taking some time to get some education under my belt. That's
awesome.
That's kind of what I'm doing.
That's great. And you're currently running, give me the correct name, Inland Northwest.
For sustainable development.
For sustainable development.
Yeah.
Okay, I always forget the word for.
Yeah.
So Inland Northwest for sustainable development. Tell us a little bit about that.
So it began, right around the same time that Bonner Breakdown began last fall. And it was really a few friends of mine. We were out at their place having a bonfire. And I had been working in local government before I stepped away. And we were seeing our local governments kind of going at it against each other.
Right.
And my studies had my studying, also simultaneous, my studying had been around sustainable development and around strategic communications in sustainable development. And it was, I mean, to be honest, it was a bit frustrating to see our government, because how are we going to move forward in what my hope for my kids' future here in this community, to be really sustainable and to move forward together and working together in a good way, if we can't even get along as a small town, you know? It was pretty frustrating.
Yeah, totally.
And so we started as my friend and I said, you know what, let's use media the same way media is being used with an agenda. Let's use it with an agenda for good. And so that's how we launched. And we launched covering the elections, and we gave a platform for candidates to really just share.
Yep.
And then that also helps constituents to learn, what do I want in my elected official?
That's great.
What do I want out of this? And it helps them to really get engaged as well. So that's how we started.
That's awesome. Awesome. So, and then we have Karita with us. Karita,
hi, everybody.
It's good to have you. Good to have you on.
Thank you.
Give us a little bit of your history and kind of background and where you're from and all that business.
So I moved here in 2008 from San Francisco. I'm a California girl. It's okay, people. I say that with a disclaimer every time.
It's okay. It's all right. It's all right.
Yes, I moved here in 2008, and really, at that time when I moved up here, was just there was a lot going on in California. I wanted to get away to God's country and continue to homeschool my kids and teach them skills that weren't really conducive for living in California at the time. There was just a lot going on. We had suffered a lot of fires that year, and there was just a lot going on. And so we moved up here and lived up in Elmira for a little bit.
Okay.
And moved into Sandpoint proper in 2014.
Okay.
And remarried. I have 4 kids of my own and then 2 bonus children, so
awesome.
I have 6.
Cool.
So at home, we tend to have 4 at a time.
Okay.
I have 1 older in Sacramento, 1 at school in Utah, and then 1 who lives locally north in Bonners Ferry.
Okay.
Older kids, and so the rest are at home. And I was just really feeling like Sandi and I were kind of on the same track. Her idea around being frustrated with the government and the communication style and things that kind of go on in our community, I experienced on a different level. And so,
like which kind of level? Like what? Because you're
go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, because you maybe give some more context around your husband.
Sure.
Right.
So my husband is a first responder in town. He works for Selkirk Fire Department.
Great. Yeah.
Currently, he's out at the not Kokolala. I always want to say Kokolala, Kerrywood Station.
Okay. Yeah.
So he's out there, and just really seeing things go on the community from that perspective, and just having an opportunity to meet a lot of different people and just hear a lot of different things. I really thought, okay, I feel like the community needs to come together and work together. And then also having teenage children in this town can prove to be challenging.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of social challenges for that age group. Yeah. So being able to experience and interact with parents, children, other people in the community on that level, I've learned a lot about myself and about the people in my community, and I really just feel like it's time to, it doesn't matter if the topic is bullying or if the topic is going to the grocery store, if the topic is politics.
Sure.
It seems to me that there's a struggle with communication, communicating appropriately and properly.
Absolutely.
I can be mad at Sandi right now. That's fine, but we're still going to have a conversation. We need to have a solution.
Yeah.
And so my heart is to come up with a productive, proactive way of doing that and meeting needs.
That's great. That's great. Well, I know that very few people are willing to take risks in today's society in the sense of self-exposure, right? And so when you start a podcast or you put yourself on a platform and you say, hey, I'm going to either conduct interviews, what we're doing here, or we're going to do anything in that in the media environment, I had to wrestle with doing this show for a long time because I realized, man, the minute that I put myself in this position, it just opens everything up for scrutiny. It opens everything up for a little bit more criticism, a little bit, do I like to be criticized? No. Do I like feedback? Yes. So, I think that there's only a handful of people that are, I think, willing to step into specifically this arena. So kudos to you guys for deciding to jump in. Yeah. It's not easy, but it is, I think it's really rewarding when I get feedback from people who watched a show and going, I had no idea that's what they were thinking when they did that.
Sure.
Like whether it was, I'm like, oh, okay. It's not my job to judge what they're saying across from me. I think people expect me to be a journalist. I'm not. Right. But my goal is to listen and to ask questions and to be curious and to not filter everything through my own biases too much. Right.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
try to.
Yeah. Try to.
Anyways,
That's a human tendency.
It is. It just is what that is. It is what it is. Sure. And so tell me about your current kind of activities and the things that you guys are doing, because you just recently said, okay, we've got a crisis happening in Sandpoint and we need to begin to get some information out there and have some conversations. So tell us a little bit about what you guys are currently doing.
Okay. So
we're working it out.
Which, great,
so
which is awesome.
We just want to make sure that, and we told Shelby this on our second, I guess, episode, was, I think that most of us have so much information coming at us.
Boy, do we.
And we don't quite know what that means for us specifically in this community. What does it mean that the whole world is in a pandemic and that our nation is in an emergency? What does that mean for me right here in Bonner County?
That's a good question.
And so we were kind of, Karita and I, because we're planning on launching in April, we're in contact a lot, and we're like, who do we look to? And we couldn't quite figure it out. So then we just said, well, we'll do it, we'll jump on and organize. And so and what we really want to make sure is happening is that any cracks, any gaps that are being missed, we want to make sure that we're capturing and taking care of as a community. And I know, and so that's what brings us kind of to you right now.
Sure,
I know that you have a reputation of being really great at bringing people together so if we're able to find the gaps, we can work with you.
That's awesome.
and then mobilize to make sure that it's being met.
And being able to act as a communication point, I think,
cool.
for social media, it does have some good attributes.
It does, absolutely.
Where people can communicate to us, and then we can then post it, put it out there to the mayor, whatever officials that we're in constant contact with, and being able to facilitate that.
That's great.
And I think that courage or vulnerability you were speaking of is helpful in these situations, because I have the personality that I will just go straight to the mayor and say what's going on, and I know that's great. And I'm willing to do that for our community, and he appreciates that as well. I help him to know how, like, what's going on out here and what we're feeling, and I think that knowing that what we're doing is when we go to sleep at night, and knowing that what we're doing is really trying to bring this community together is what helps to have that courage to be vulnerable, and and that's what you're doing as well.
Trying. I think it is a challenge, because we've got different mindsets at work when it comes to the coronavirus.
Right.
And I would block it into three main categories. We've got fear and dread.
Yep.
That impending doom sense, like this could end the world mindset, just driven by fear.
Right.
Then you have the I really could care less people that are
Right.
like, Corona, whatever, I'll drink one, like, leave me alone, that type of thing,
Right.
like they've just got this different mindset around that.
Right, right.
And then there's people who are, I think, with the majority of people who are sitting in this place of, I want to do the right thing. I want to be cautious. I don't want to be ruled by fear, but I also want to make sure I'm being responsible.
Being aware
And responsible, and know what to do next, and who do I trust, and what do I listen to, because this I think breaks down. Prediction moment. I think that this little situation with the coronavirus in America is shutting down for a few weeks, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think we'll see 25-30% unemployment by next month.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's going to get really ugly.
It's
And
gonna get
that's
really
why
ugly.
I think it's important for us to stay connected, because
Correct.
you are so fantastic with the housing and,
There's
and,
that, yeah, we will.
We haven't
Yeah.
seen the need yet in our
Yes.
community.
And
Well,
we-
we're about to.
yeah.
But here's the thing that I think is going to happen, that I think is going to be really one of the greatest benefits, is that we're going to communicate differently because of need. Right. We're gonna sift through all the fluff for what's true, not just what tickles my personal like or dislike. Not
Yes.
just what confirms my bias, but I have to find what's true. And so I think we're all going to be forced into this position to go, what's actually happening, not just what my favorite TV personality says on the left or the right,
Right.
yes.
or not just what this organization that I like says or this says, but who's actually at the table, who's giving us the reality, And so that, to me, is one of those things where it's like, oh, I think we're going to come out of this much more unified as a nation, and I think that a lot of the people who are the hyper, maybe, what's the right word? I want to use the right word, that are the extreme voices on both sides are going to come down. Like, they're going to calm down, because this is too big to just keep pointing fingers and yelling at the other person.
Yeah,
Well, who
that's
can maintain
exactly
that
Right.
place of emotional level 10 constantly?
Yeah.
Can't
Some
do it.
people do.
Some people
I
do.
don't know how, but they pull it off.
They do when we're not in a national emergency.
Right.
They have that
Yeah,
energy.
it'll
but
take
right
some
now,
time for them to
all
wear
of
out.
our
but-
energy, almost has to be protected in a way.
Yep.
And we were talking with the college kiddos, I should say, that are home last night. We were asking each other to go around and tell what changed for you from Friday to now.
Wow.
Because it's
It's
significantly
been
different.
fast.
In 1 week. Not even 1 week.
Yep, tomorrow.
And our college kiddo, he was saying that it was the the sports being shut down.
Huge.
He watched one of the biggest soccer games, I guess, and there were only 4 ball boys, and there's usually a whole bunch of them, and he was thinking, am I seeing this wrong? And then for us, it was really the I don't know, it was the family members that I have outside of here who are in a almost like they're having to stay inside their homes.
Yeah.
And
Hotspots, we'll call them.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have a daughter that's going through
One
that.
in Sacramento and
Yeah.
parents in Sonoma, in the Bay Area, and they are on very strict lockdown.
Come on.
And so
Yep.
Down there.
now our schools are closed, and we want, like you said, we want to be a little bit balanced with our response to it and calm. But we want to make sure that they aren't leaving, that they're staying isolated, and how can we make sure that they're not falling through the cracks? And then the kids who need food. I guess that's the biggest thing for me as a mama.
Come on,
It's
come on.
just, let's make
There's
sure the kids eat.
what there was 3 different posts that I saw. Uptown Bagel,
Yep.
Arlo's,
Arlo's.
and then what was the third?
Pack River Store.
Pack River Store. Like, then there may be more, but I'm
Yeah.
just like, yes, thank you.
And I
Right?
had
Like,
told Sandy, I was like, why before? And I just saw an article, it might have been somewhere out of Boston, but now the school bus drivers are delivering, they're still doing it every day where the schools are closed. They're just dropping off the stuff in the morning, the lunch and the breakfast for this many kids.
Wow.
Why are we not using...
I think Idaho State doesn't allow that.
Yeah.
I was reading about
And
that.
I'm curious as to, Mr. Little, why?
Sure.
Why?
Well, emergency declaration, we can change rules on the fly right now.
Yes.
You know, I think that there's, I think that Idaho being a late, it's always late. Let's just,
In anything,
Idaho is
fashion,
just late. Yeah.
trends,
music.
whatever. Yeah, music.
So we're late because we like we got coronavirus late compared to what everybody else, like the whether or not we're testing and whether or not it's here, who knows. But as far as reported incidents, it was low. Tons of complaints about that. I get that.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that oftentimes we kind of, because we isolate as a state a little bit, and I'm not saying anything pro or against that, but because of that mindset, you know, we're not forward thinking often enough, fast enough.
Right.
Sure.
And that's not a criticism, it's just an observation. So I think right now, because he did declare a state of emergency, the forward thinking entrepreneurial innovators need to get on the ball.
I agree.
On the ball.
Absolutely.
Preach, brother.
Yeah.
The
Ooh, that felt good.
Yeah. It's so true. You know, it's on one hand, it's so heavy for our small business owners right now.
It is, yeah.
And it's gonna be huge. And I'm excited to talk with Andrea, the director of the Bonner County Economic Corporation, Economic Development Corporation, and but turning this into an opportunity to innovate is you know, that is the forward thinking. Is how, all right, I should have, starting Friday when I started to feel this happening, I should have a plan B. I should write that business plan out and be ready to roll it out when I have to close.
That's so good.
You know what I mean? That's my thinking. But of course, I dream a lot, and I'm a
It's okay.
And I understand that I might not understand the practicality of it. You know, and hopefully Andrea can help us with some of that.
Yeah, Andrea's been great. She's just great to talk to, easy to work with. So when it comes to innovation and the mindset around innovation, what do you think some of the big needs are going to be that we could already get the ball rolling for solutions? Obviously, you talked about getting the meals to the bus stops, right? So maybe families that are in a difficult financial situation might be able to just go online to the school district's website or their app or whatever and say, yes, I want food delivery for my kids. Right? Like, I mean, that would be something that could be done pretty quickly.
I was not able to sit in on the interview with Superintendent
Tom
Albertson. Sure. But I know he had mentioned they were not quite a survey, but they have information. I know they sent out emails. If you're needy, fill this out.
Which is great.
But a lot of these families that are needy can't check the emails.
They can't go to the library.
They can't go to the library. And the libraries are closed now. They can't.
So I heard back from Kay Peterson, Dave Miles, Sherry Hatley, Paul Anzolino he is the superintendent over in Priest River.
Okay.
And Jackie Johnson, Kathy Burgett, Jeff Penrose, and Casey McLaughlin, all principals from schools. And they gave me their needs. They have not been approved to provide lunches. These guys have not been approved to provide lunches. And Jeff Penrose.
Deep breath. Sorry.
He is from LPO. I know when Jeff Penrose sent me this email, I had to stop the tears and focus. But, you know, he said that he doesn't have a way to contact his students right now. I think today he should be able to. And that's if they connect, you know, if they decide to connect. Does that make sense? And at that time, he's going to ask them to check in and assess their nutritional needs. But right now he has, you know, he says, you know, he's got his office food bank, if you will, and he's got granola bars and cup of noodle. But they're very specific. Kay Peterson said between 70 to 90 is needed.
Meals.
Yeah, Dave Miles said 300, and they can only do curbside. Sherry Hatley, she's from Hope, and this one's interesting too. She said between 1 and 5, because most of her students can get them from Clark Fork. But she has one family in particular that she worries about who have 8 kiddos at home. And not only do they not have the capacity to come pick up lunch or anything, but they can't pick up their school packets either. So we need someone to be able, in the Hope area, to be able to deliver to this family.
Yep.
And it goes on,
Let me just say what's going to happen when we're done here. I'm going to not do my normal, because what I do is I time log every little piece of conversation and I put it in the notes so people can just click on it to watch whatever they want to watch.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, if you watch on YouTube, you click on the time and it sends you there. It doesn't do it on Facebook. Fix it, Facebook. But but they do it on YouTube. So I'm not going to put any of that on there, but I will put the timestamp for what the current needs are this conversation, because people need to see this and hear what the needs are. So, and of course you're going to be going live later today. Is that correct?
I don't know. We were gonna go with a first responder, but I don't think the need's there yet.
I have not.
Well, maybe we do a log roll and we go live on your thing later. Just an idea. All right, we'll see. But because I think because you've got a unique platform with your group and stuff that you're doing right now.
Okay.
So with these needs, you got Hope, Clark Fork. Priest River.
Clark Fork's good. They're fine.
Okay, good.
So we have, actually in town, we have the high school. We have LPO.
Okay.
We have the middle school who have needs.
Well, I know Kootenai and Farman are providing meals for their students.
And it's no questions asked.
Right.
So,
yeah,
they're not going to stand there and make sure you're... and we have, let's see, Jackie Johnson is from... she is from Southside, I think. Kathy Burgett is from Sagal. And Casey McLaughlin is from the middle school.
The middle school, yeah.
And then we're waiting to hear back from Mr. Anzolino from Priest River, but I don't think they have anything going on either.
Okay.
And he's just really trying to gauge even how to find out. I asked them 3 questions. 1, do you have meals taken care of? 2, if not, how many do you need? And 3, is the school an option for
a pickup?
Just so that they didn't have to mess around with reading too much, and he got back to me that he hasn't even assessed that yet. So I'm sure that that's coming. But on the plus side, it's only a week that we need to figure out for them, because then they'd be in spring break, right? And then after that, I don't know.
Well, we might have to provide through spring break because of the level of people that aren't bringing in money.
Correct. Right, yeah.
To feed families. So, my son's in Reading, and he manages, he's a shift manager at Planet Fitness, and they closed the gym. He's got to file for unemployment. He's still got to pay rent. Still got all this stuff. He's like, so,
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It
pretty
is.
Wild.
And that is a big one coming up that we haven't even begun to tackle yet, which is the economic impact of this. This is it's going to be big, and ideally, if we were to go backwards, which we can't, but ideally we can learn from this. I'm going to put a plug in there for sustainable development of. Sustainability would be when these types of things hit. Number one, we're already prepared for what Karita and I are trying to do, and you're helping us with now. We already have a plan for it. We just roll it out, but also it's not the blow wouldn't be as big in sustainability. Yeah. And what does that look like for us as a community moving forward? So.
Yep. So, Karita, what do you see happening with the first responders? What are you hearing in that kind of field?
Basically, the only thing I've heard really is that basic things are protecting themselves while still being able to serve the community.
People,
They are responding to certain calls. They're letting the medical, the EMS
handle those.
Okay. Unless it's absolutely necessary, so that they're then available to respond to whether it's fires, other calls that are non-medically related. They seem to be pretty calm still. There's obviously not panic in what I've seen.
Except for the toilet paper aisle.
I know that, they're limiting visitors in their stations and they're taking precautions. I was actually signed up for a CPR first aid class that was supposed to take place on Monday. They're canceling classes, really just trying to, I don't want to use the term self-isolate, but they're really, doing what they need to do to stay on top of it so that they can provide service. It's really scary, even just looking at the news, seeing, a lot of first responders, a lot of healthcare, they're getting sick and they're getting hammered in a lot of larger areas. And so.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, there's multiple cases in Post Falls.
Yeah.
Now of coronavirus with first responders.
Yeah. So
that's a headline I read, just to be clear. That was just a headline. I don't know if it's true or not. It was a headline.
Yeah, validated it. Yeah.
Wow.
I want to go back to the kids, to the school thing. I was thinking about Jeff Penrose and his particular challenge, which I think might be different than maybe some of the other schools. He's working with a group of at-risk kids that are struggling. So my heart for these guys, and having volunteered there in the past and just being in that environment, concerned that particularly that group of kids doesn't get too disconnected. And I think school is a connected place for them.
It is.
Not just for the lunch, but there's emotional support. There's a lot that goes on there. Yeah. And so one of my mullings or concerns added in this is just really thinking about that group, and then also thinking about the stress of parents having their kids home, interaction and stress level, and aware of that. I know that we in Bonner County, our county struggles with a lot of poverty, a lot of domestic violence. A lot of that is towards children under the age of 18. And so that's also a concern of mine that I'm contemplating, thinking of. And so
I think that I think that some of the effects of this, at least I'm praying, that some of the effects of this will flip from being an increase of those types of calls to greater connection at home, really spending time with each other, really like choosing to, like, I'll just say, like, one of the worst days was hearing that the NCAA tournament got canceled for me.
You and me both with the basketball, dude.
The sports.
I know, right? I'm like, what are we gonna do?
I've not missed baseball since the baseball strike, and I'm like, what?
I know.
No baseball either?
I know. So
we're a soccer family.
Yeah.
We're going
so
through the
you
same
guys
thing.
are soccer fans. I really think that because the distractions of entertainment are being dampened, that we can maybe connect better at home, right? Because honestly, like turn off all the crazy talk show news channels and just like spend time with each other.
Sure.
And because we don't have the entertainment, I turned on ESPN. I will say this: I turned on ESPN for about 3 minutes the other night, and it was just woeful story of what could have been from this team and what this team could have done in the tournament and what this team could have done in their high school tournament. And I'm like, this is depressing. Yeah, I'm like off, because I'm like, oh, I got better things to do with my time. There's great things to binge on Netflix. No, I'm just teasing. But
I actually had the time. I didn't, but I had the time to. I just ended up curling up with a blanket.
Yeah, come on.
But I had the time to go for a walk yesterday.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful.
We went to the park,
and,
Traverse Park, and just hung out for a little bit yesterday too. Yeah.
Yeah.
My house is really clean. I've been doing that.
And there is a bigger, a bigger calling, a bigger something, in my life and my faith, it's God, but for others it might be just the universe or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Is also telling us something, you know, that we something bigger, that we need to take a step back. We need to breathe. We need to spend time together, and it's causing us to reset some things.
It is. I think this is a huge reset that we're going to receive. I'm okay. So people who know me know, like, I'm the eternal optimist.
Yes,
I can look at any negative situation and go like, oh, there's something really good that's going to come out of that. Like, oh, I'll find your silver lining, you know, like I'll find it. But I really think that reset is a great way to view this. I also think that we need to view this as a community like a war against an unknown, unseen enemy. Like, we need to view it like a war. Like, okay, so we only have 2 ventilators at Bonner General. Okay, how many small businesses and startups here have 3D printers? How many? 2, 3? Do we have 5?
Yeah,
you know what? We could print ventilators if BGH needs more ventilators. Who's gonna take up some of these innovative concepts? Like, who's gonna like rise to the occasion?
Absolutely.
Right. And I feel like, man, it was in battle. It was in like World War II. Everything shut down, and we repurposed everything to make sure that the tyranny of Nazi Germany didn't take over the world.
Right.
Okay.
This is like a
So we've got a tyrannical.
enemy.
This is a world enemy, and you know, we are one of the only nations that, like, I love the fact that. Say what you want about the administration, but when they said we're going to drop state line requirements on doctors so they can do telemedicine over state lines,
Interstate.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, because that
Yes.
means that I can have a phone call with an available doctor who's not here and have it be covered and have it be totally cleared. You know, I'm not going to get in trouble for doing something out of my network right now.
Right.
So I think like those types of things, like allowing for us to be more innovative, getting
Yes.
corporations at the table saying like, okay, here's the problems. We got to fix this. What are we going to do? I think the administration just this morning signed the emergency declaration for wartime. It was the same, to repurpose industries to battle this virus.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
so they did that this
fantastic.
morning, and I'm
I
like,
heard
that's
something to
great
that effect.
news.
That is. That's
Because
huge.
we have innovators. I don't know. Let's stick Elon Musk and Bill Gates on this thing and see what happens, regardless of
Right.
what you think about them politically. Brilliant minds,
Yeah,
who can
creativity at its
be
best.
creative and
Yeah.
innovative. Like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
You know, so
And we were talking last night also around the table. What's different for Germany? What did they do differently that they have so many cases and so few deaths? And one of the things that we just proposed could be is that they do have I forget. They have so many hospital beds per 100,000 people in their country, and that's all that's really missing here in this. And something so simple could save so many lives, you know. And
As socialized medicine? Something that simple? Sorry.
I don't know if
So-
for sure beds,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
And that's the big thing, and that's so simple to me. Like, really, that's what's different.
well, and it's
I know
interesting
there's
because
a lot of
I just
factors,
saw that type O blood types have a higher resistance than type A.
Interesting.
Well, okay, well, that's it. You know, like, I don't know how that works.
What's
you know,
the
like,
science
what's
behind that? I'm curious.
Yeah, you know,
Interesting.
you know, which type of populations have the predominance of the genetic receptor to the virus, right?
Okay.
So there's like Asians and males have an over, and I will post these articles down below that I read, that there's an over expression of the genes or of the receptors that actually attach to this virus more easily, and it's predominantly in Asians and males. Obviously it can happen to anybody, but just like there's interesting things that we're finding out, like malaria, like Bayer, the owners of Bayer Drugs just made 3 million malaria tabs because they're seeing success with malaria tabs combating coronavirus. So they just
Interesting.
gave 3 million tabs to the U.S. government this morning. You know, like, you're looking at these types of things that are going on, and it's confusing. I have no idea if any of that's true or not.
Right.
But it's like, man, we got to get this mindset that
We have to try.
We got to try. We got to go for it locally.
Yes.
We got to go for it here,
Right.
not just what's happening big.
Sure.
And we're in this weird little place right now locally where we're just kind of sitting around isolating, wondering, you know, like I said the other day, when the storm's going to hit. And so it feels like it's not going to, you know, and I think that it will be. We've done a good job at having those who have gone before us give us good examples of how to prepare ourselves, and so it will be maybe a little bit less of an impact on us. Maybe, I don't know, but it's going to impact us economically. No matter what, because we're isolating, you know, because we're having to shut down, even if the virus doesn't come here and devastate us with its with the health issue, and so no matter what, life is completely changed for us. And even my kids are like, I remember doing this kind of stuff for Y2K, you know, we all do. And
We all do, yep.
And
For those of you that can remember Y2K.
Yes. and I grew up doing this my whole life, you know. And so when this came around, I was like, I am not going to get toilet paper. I refuse, because I grew up doing this. I'm not going to do it again. And now here we are, and even my children are like, whoa, Mom, this is kind of strange.
So you're saying you have leftover toilet paper stash from,
you know,
as a child? You don't
No, from Y2K. I just ran out of salt a few years ago from
That's
Y2K.
It's awesome.
Clearly that was a priority for me.
Salt has many purposes.
Yeah, popcorn and salt. I could survive.
That's funny.
That's great. I think one of the things that I want to kind of maybe transition a little bit our conversation is to what kind of made you dive into sustainable development, and kind of what's some of the drivers around that.
Okay.
And what you're, you know, kind of what you're seeing with that. And we'll continue to dive into what's happening in our world, but I think I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of your passion around sustainable development.
Sure. It kind of, I didn't know much about it before I stepped out from my career. And, you know, working in local government and the public sector of my career versus the private sector, which was I was in human resources, was very different. And in the private sector, you have the top, you know, CEO, if you will, who maybe started this business and know what they're doing and have a degree in business and have been doing it since the beginning, and they're going to be, and it's their baby. Whereas in the public sector, you know, your bosses are constantly changing, and they don't have to have qualifications. They might not know what they're doing. And so it's very, and
what?
I'm going to take a sip.
Whoa.
And it just is what it is. And yet they're very similar in that they are a business. It's a business, and so when I stepped away, so that I could get some of my own formal education, my own qualifications under my belt to kind of go along with my resume, that was in the back of my mind of it would be nice to help our community to move forward effectively, so that every time a new person gets in office, we're not turning the boat a whole nother direction, because there's 400 employees at the county who are affected by the next guy who's behind the wheel, and there's millions of dollars, you know. And so I think that's how I probably fell along that study line. And I came across something called donut economics, and it's this idea of an economic picture for the world and communities that is not based on growth, economics that are not based on growth, and it's not based on the GDP. It's more based on, you would create a metric, and this is why it's an ideal. It's going to take forever to get to. But you would take a metric and you measure, how we're doing economically on more than just growth. You measure it on the least of the people in your community. How are they doing? And if they're
Sure,
not, if
that's great.
and that's the metric you use. And so then I started, that evolved into sustainable development and sustainable strategic communications and sustainability, blah blah blah.
Okay.
so
Yeah.
so I am a Christian, and it just is, and I'm a mom, and it just really there's just something in me that wants to build, work for something in this community that I'm proud to hand over to my children,
Okay. Yeah.
or that is working well for them as I pass the baton, and so that's really why I started. It's just, and it starts with conversation. It's amazing the power of conversation and communication. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that we need healing right now more than anything, and to be comfortable being uncomfortable with our differences, and that is where it has to actually start.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to, to move forward in, changing the whole economic picture for us, but it actually has to just start with healing and communication, and so that's why I started.
That's good. That's awesome.
That's my little passion for.
Yeah. I think there's some huge wins that we can find when we look at the bottom tier health of the community. Because, and I say bottom not negatively, it's just one of those, whether you're in the lower income or you have less opportunity via education or whatever the situation might be. I think that there's lots of ways to create sustainability. And I think that dealing with the mindset of motivational, what I would call motivational poverty. Motivational poverty is oftentimes when we put ourselves in a position, or we're raised in a situation where our drive isn't necessarily there to build something. Not everyone is made that way.
Right.
No matter how hard you wish everybody was made to be go-getters and to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, literally, some people just are not wired that way.
Yeah.
And so there's some really, I think, amazing ways to approach that without guilt, shame, condemnation, without slamming somebody because they don't have a better paying job.
Right.
Actually, there's a lot of things that need to happen in this community to kind of raise that bar a little bit. But I think there's a motivational piece that really needs to get dealt with. And I think that relationships are so critical to dealing with overcoming these types of situations. So the strategic communications piece, I'm just giving you my 2 cents, but whatever.
Yeah.
So
we're just off the cuff.
We'll
right
take
now.
10 cents. We'll take a full 10 cents.
Give me that dime. So I think that the communication piece is really big, because a lot of people who have a lot of wealth are not great relationally.
Right.
They struggle with great relationships and deep relationships. I'm not saying that's the rule. It's a generalization. So, because I have great relationships with some really wealthy people, because the wealth isn't a thing to them.
Yeah.
Right? They love people. They care about people. But some people who are really just are afraid somebody's coming after their money, or afraid, like any of that, sometimes they can isolate and prevent real relationships from developing. So there can be relational poverty, right? It has nothing to do.
That's a big deal around here, I would say.
Really?
I think there's a big gap there.
Yeah.
I think that relational poverty is certainly an issue around here.
There is some,
And I think it's because we have such a diverse, again, not to be political, but that plays a big part in it, I think, in this area.
Yeah. Well, we've thank you, Jesus. We have positioned ourselves in this community to be on one team or the other. And we have allowed ourselves to fight for truth. And in this process of fighting, whether or not you like the rhetoric of the president, whether or not you hate the ideas on the left or the right or whatever, we have lost our ability to see each other as real people.
I agree with that.
And I think this is that starting point for, this is why I'm glad everybody's at home for a while. Like, let's just be real with each other. And I think that this relational poverty issue, I think it comes down to, we've put so much emphasis on our differences.
Right.
It's true.
That is very
We
true.
put so much emphasis on why I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there's not right and wrong. There is. There it absolutely is. But how we get there, the way that we get there,
Sure.
how we approach all of that, I think we have to have a people first mindset. Like, you have a heart, you have a family, you've got people that you love deeply, you care about people. You're not inherently selfish if you align on the right or the left. You're a person.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
we need to just dial a lot of that back to this basic, like, we can be in relationship with each other.
Sure.
And totally disagree and be okay.
And do it in a healthy
Yes.
way
Yeah.
that
Do
can
it in
still
a-
be productive.
That's good.
Productive. That's what. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
exactly right. We need to be productive.
And productive, you can have productive disagreements that don't mean that I have to win you over to my side.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. I want to turn this on you for a
All
second.
right. Yeah. Feel free.
What is the church's role in the situation, like right now, what we're in right now? What
Yeah.
would you say is the church's role in this?
Or
well,
position.
Or do they
well,
have one even? I
okay.
don't.
It's been quiet.
So I think that we've got, I'll try and unpack my thoughts on this
Okay.
somewhat succinctly.
I kind of just threw that out.
It's all good. No worries. So the first thing that I think is that what the church should be. The church should be an absolute beacon of hope. That there is hope in whatever the darkness is. There's hope. There's hope. There's hope. I think that the church, which is the community of believers, it's not just the buildings or the different denominational, congregational gatherings.
Exactly,
Right.
yeah.
So we've got this bigger C church, right? What we call universal church, and the universal church should not be bound to fear. Should not be operating in fear, right? Because there's a little scripture that says God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind, or self-control. So we shouldn't be operating out of fear as the big C church. We have a faith in a big provider, in a big God who gives us hope
Right.
every day. So I think that that's one of those basics that the church should be focused on right now more than anything else, is that you don't have to be afraid and there's hope. I think the church has gone a little quiet in this season because there's a fear in the church.
Okay.
So there's a fear in the church, and I'm just speaking generally, not any church specifically, but just in general, Christians. I think there's a little bit of a fear to say, be fearless and have hope, because some people interpret that as you can do whatever you want and you can take risks and you don't have to be responsible. Like to say, hey, you can have faith not only that God heals. Maybe you can have faith that God's going to protect you, that you can, that God's going to be with you and provide for you and all that stuff. But when it's hitting the fan and people are having a difficult time, it's very difficult to say, have faith, have hope, have joy, have all these
Absolutely,
things,
yeah.
because the first and foremost, that has to come from within. And this is where the church has often looked so much at the external fruit of circumstance to determine what an internal fruit should be. So we look at what's happening around us to determine whether or not we should be at peace, or whether or not we should be at joy, or those fruits of the Spirit.
That makes sense.
Right? So the church is being corrected right now and being reminded that actually all of that comes from the depth of your relationship with God on what your fruit is internally. And that should bleed into everything that you do.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? That should be where you find hope. that should be where you're not afraid about your next paycheck, because you've got a really, like, if, I think you've got a really big, good father who's going to take care of your needs because he promised he would. Doesn't mean nothing bad's going to happen. It doesn't mean you're not going to lose your job. It doesn't mean any of that. But I have a hope and a trust that actually can guide me and help me make the best decisions, because I'm not making choices out of fear. I'm making choices out of hope. Right? So there's that internal piece. So I think the church is being corrected in general on that a little bit. And that's not a critique on anyone, on any pastor, nothing at all.
No,
I just think
all
it's
human
just
too, like the rest of us.
yeah,
We're
and it's
working it
just
out.
it's just what I see happening big picture.
Sure.
And there's
like
a
you
lot
asked.
there's a lot of mistrust with the church because it's been so convoluted with politics, and it's not.
I tell you, that's a really tough one, because what we believe internally will drive our decisions externally. And anybody who says what you believe internally should not impact what you do externally is in la land. Like, it's just not a reality.
It's not basic human
it's
nature,
not basic,
first of all.
yeah, like how you see the world, the filter that you put on the world, whether you believe in Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad or are an atheist, that framework will help you determine what is right, what is wrong, what you choose, what you don't choose. That's just who we are.
Okay.
So there's no way to separate the two.
But interestingly, for me, when having been in the environment, I see that my personal values have nothing to do with whether this guy can do the job or not.
For real.
And
yeah.
so
That's
then so then when I go to vote, I'm like, who can do this job?
Yeah.
I'm very HRE about it, if you will.
That's great.
Like very
come on.
who has the qualifications to meet the role,
Great.
and
Great.
and it's not true for every political office, though. That's true for our local county
Agreed.
government.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily true at the state level. State level,
Sure.
Sage and Heather are going to be representing out of their values at what. It's very different. You're not running a business the way you are at the county.
Right, because the commissioners are more executive branch.
They're legislative.
They're legislative,
Right,
but they operate as the executives over the county.
So if you're thinking in the private sector, like a CEO, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So what's interesting to me, that I think we get a little mixed up on is that, people can have thoughts outside of what their faith is. Right? Like, people can often rationalize and come up with all types of great ideas and everything that have nothing to do with what their belief system is. So that we do have this little bit of a dichotomy where, like I said, your faith will drive so much of your perception, but it doesn't necessarily say that you're not rational or not, and I think that's kind of what you're kind of getting at. Like, actually, I can look at this rationally, and if I don't agree with them or their faith, I can still vote for them because I'm able to perceive their benefits or negatives or whatever.
Yes.
In
Thank
that.
you. Yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of add that.
And there's a lot out there that really believes that Christianity, it goes right along with the current administration. Like, it's the same thing. And here we are, three people who
I'm a believer.
Yeah, who are Christians, and I would guess, I don't know you very well yet, but I would guess that we're all very different in that.
Yep.
Most conservatives call me a liberal, and most liberals call me conservative. So I call myself unaffiliated moderate.
Yeah.
And so there's just like there's diversity in every faith and in every political view. It's true with Christianity. We're all very diverse.
Yep.
and
very, very.
And
I'm a huge proponent for people to be able to have the freedom,
right,
to be aggressively conservative Republican who's more libertarian than Republican, right? Like, anti-government versus just small government.
Right.
Minded, right? Like, that's, I think, this dividing line between libertarian is like not just freedom, but give it all. like we want all the freedom, versus say a, small government Republican, which is really considered more of a moderate now, in the current climate.
I don't know if I can have all the freedom, because
yeah.
I'm a human being, and I think it can be problematic. No, I'm kidding.
People. Well, and I don't think a lot of people would agree with anarchy, but I think a lot of people really kind of wish that's kind of the utopia, is that the government got nothing to do with anything that I do, which is okay. Like, you can have that. We, unfortunately, if that's the mindset, we live in a world that has big government, big systems, big bureaucracies. I'm all for cutting that stuff down and making it smaller. I would consider myself a conservative Republican who's into small government, right? Like, I think that the less the government's involved, the better, generally.
I lean more that way as well, personally. Yeah. And, but I do think that there's a place for it, and I do think that, which that's what it means to have small government. And but I also believe in, the infrastructure that, and I don't know if I've said this to Sage or not, but I know that the way Sage votes, maybe someday I will say it to him, but he'll hear you. He
watches the show.
And Veronica, hi. I love you. And the infrastructure has to be in place, in my personal opinion, before you can start voting down government. So, if we're going to say, I don't think it's the government's place to be involved in education or medical care, that should be the community that comes around. Well, let's get that infrastructure in place then, I guess, is
what's I think most difficult is that we do have structures in place. We do have things that we have to deal with, from a governmental perspective. And I had a good conversation with Sage about that. I think that there is something around, how do we move forward in reducing government how do you do all of that when you have such a big bureaucracy?
Yeah,
you learn to have a conversation all over again. It comes back to being able to communicate. None of what you guys are saying needs to happen is going to happen if we can't.
That's right.
Have a conversation.
Well, and here's one of the things that I'll say is, when you have someone who's in government who is thoughtful enough and self-aware enough to say, you know what, I didn't ask enough questions about that issue when I went into this topic, and when I was going for this, I didn't get enough information, so it died. But now I've got to go back and get more information and clarify and have more conversations in order to make this thing that he's working on happen. I appreciate that.
Right.
In a civil servant.
Sure.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I think we've lost curiosity.
Yes. Yeah.
And
the here's going back to the church is how do we engage the church to make sure that infrastructure is in place, so that we can begin to untangle the bureaucracy and let that fall into those infrastructures or the non-church. So I am in a life partnership with someone on the whole other side. He's liberal, and he's like, thinks the government needs to step in because people cannot be trusted. They just are.
Well, there's also,
and I appreciate that perspective. And so it's good to be with someone like that in my life, where we can bounce such differing perspectives off of one another, and really help. This is what it's all about, that conversation and being comfortable with that difference.
Yeah, I think that we all operate from the perspectives and the things that we've grown and learned over the years, through experience, through upbringing, through all of that stuff. And we're all fishing through it, trying to figure out, how do I do this? What's the best way to do this? How do I figure this out? And I think we're all in this journey together, to try and figure out, okay, well, I don't have answers to what does the church do in the sense of dealing with that. I know that for me personally, I always want to have hope. Like, and I always want to say, you know what? Though there's some bad things happening and some evil coming into this situation, I know in a moment it can be turned around for something great. You know, like that's just how I kind of, that's just how I'm wired, I think. But
that's great. I'm not naturally wired that way, but I through life experiences I am. So like, you know, when 2008 happened, I had a residential construction business, and we were building a spec house. And so it was painful. It was very painful. And
2008 was rough for that.
It was terrible. And
I was in mortgages.
And I just kind of like, you know, my former husband and I at the time just kind of like were devastated. But now, this time around, I'm more like you, because I could be devastated, or I could say, hey, what's the opportunity in this? And how can we innovate? And all right, I'm not going to let this get me down again, you know? And,
totally.
And let's take care of the kids and the elderly. And
that's right. That's right. And I think that, and this is, I'm hoping that individuals throughout our community, Christian, not Christian, whatever, just choose to be bold in their mercy, and choose to be bold in their ability to serve those who need it. This isn't a time to bicker about whether or not they deserve it.
Right.
They need it. Let's step up to the plate and figure out how to make it happen, whether it's for young children whose families are struggling.
Right.
Or whether it's an elderly couple that's struggling because they don't know how to get to the store right now, and they're afraid to go in. I was so excited to see Safeway says, and some of the stores were like from 7 to 9 a.m. It's high risk people only.
Yeah.
Like if you're stay out, we're only going to be, you know,
we've disinfected
completely. We're going to open with an absolute clean store, and they can come in without any of the other junk from anyone else, and they can, those high risk populations can go in. I'm like, yes, because that is somebody in need who has a need, and they need a safe place. And so I think all of us need to be fighting to provide those opportunities for people right now. And so you guys with your voice is so helpful, you know, being able to do your live feeds, you know, that you're doing now. Tell me how it's set up on Facebook, what you guys got going right now.
Well,
I do the most of the talking.
Yeah, she does talking.
She does all the
others. And you also do behind the scenes all sorts of research. But the tech is just like it's like this. You know, we're in actually in a studio set up in a home.
Awesome.
And I last fall when I did the election coverage, what I would do is I would I had a nice camera. It was going onto my SD drive, and I would put it on, what is it, Adobe?
Yeah.
Your gal would probably know. Adobe Premiere or something. And you know, just make it sleek and clean. I didn't take anything out of it.
Yeah. And
then get it uploaded. Now this time around, we've just been so urgent that we've done away with that and just doing the phone straight through. But the quality is really, I'm rethinking that. The quality is really just not.
And please bear with us, everybody, because we are
we're learning. Like, we're not journalists, and we're
totally.
Just we're great. Jumping and figuring it out. But
yep. Well, I'm happy to help.
Thank you. Thank you.
So it's set up on Facebook through Inland Northwest.
So, I'll tell you how the business part works. Is that one? Thank you, Karita. So we are a corporation, woman activated, and that's my consulting business, and that's consulting for mamas. And what that is really, you know, we have midwives come alongside us for about a week or two, and then they just let us go. But mothering, I did not have any equipping for mothering,
Wow.
and I just jumped into it. And,
Wow, that's
and
so cool.
Bless my children's hearts. They
Hey,
we
come on,
got through.
every first generation child has
Yeah.
to deal with parents who didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, bless their hearts. And
my oldest still likes me, thank God.
and so I'm really trying to create actually a master class for moms
cool.
to know what their child's going through in each phase of development, to know to keep their own womanhood intact, because at the end of the day they're going to be left with themselves. Their kids are going to be gone, you know,
for real,
that kind of thing. So that's the corporation, and then under that we have a DBA, which is Inland Northwest for Sustainable Development.
Okay.
And then so if you think of it as like the North Idaho, you know, hippie version of NPR, then Educated Debauchery is a show on that.
Okay. Okay.
So
how'd you come up with the name?
It's a little bit complicated.
I knew that question was coming.
I was just waiting.
So
I love her answer to it. She came up with the name.
I had no doubt.
and so listen, I know the word's a little strong. Okay, I know, and it has, and yes, there is a meaning. People are gonna look it up, and they're gonna go,
what?
But just how I looked at it, I'm like, we're just gonna flip this word. It's gonna be Karita's Urban Dictionary Format. No bad words, I promise.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, the traditional meaning of the word is illicit, indulgent, all of that. Okay, well, nowadays how I feel is people being informed and educated and thoughtful and thinking it through is illicit and looked at as, oh, that is not okay. That is not socially acceptable.
To be
cover that up.
Wow.
Right?
I just want my own opinion.
And so, well, I don't
That's
want just to
interesting.
be left with my own opinion,
No,
which
I
can
mean-
be squirrely.
No, I mean that's.
but I want to
fine.
be informed.
Yeah, that's good.
I want to be educated.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I know it's questionable. I've had a couple of people go, and including my ex-husband, who finally saw it on Facebook, and he's like, oh, the name's kind of annoying. And I go, okay, I hear that, but there's a reason why. I was trying to explain to him.
Yeah.
It is free thinking and having your own thought process and not just kind of going along with the hysteria is illicit. So her partner came up with the slogan, the revelrous path to, what was
to
it?
sensibility.
To sensibility.
Oh,
Because
that's fun.
we're gonna,
I'm glad you added a tagline. That's super helpful.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because
and
otherwise, I'm like,
What does that mean?
I'm not sure what. I'm like, this is a good little interview. I don't see debauchery,
Well,
or like there's some education.
Well, and
but,
that part
you know.
of that, and this is terrible way to start branding, because we started in a pandemic, and
Oh no,
and
that's
so there's
a great
not really
way to
much
start branding.
debauchery going on.
But you get, we're gonna have
We're gonna
a
rein some people
whole
in.
slew of Corona babies coming out of this.
yeah,
I'm just saying.
And
That's another
so
prediction.
we haven't really been able to just have fun and get the conversation going, because it's been such a serious start. So
For real. Yeah,
we
that's great.
launched in
Yeah.
a way that's really terrible for branding if you want to understand educated
Sure.
debauchery, but we had to do it. So
Yeah, that's great.
and
Yeah.
also my thinking with the name was, again, we're all inclusive at educated debauchery. I wanted to include other people, so I've seen on the Facebook page, some people have commented and they're like, that seems worthwhile. We need to check into that. Probably just because of the name. So then they're not thinking it's uptight. They're not.
Totally.
People are just
Yeah.
like, what does that even mean? Well, it means, hey, you guys, cover that up. Cover up your free thinking. Or your
Hide it.
ability. Hide it. That's not socially appropriate to be
Interesting.
informed. So,
or people tend to have I tend
Me,
to have
sure.
my own like you said, my own biases, and we get comfortable with them, and we don't want to let go of them.
Yep.
And so it is a little bit debaucherous to kind of open up and get educated and let keep those biases, but be open to perhaps let them go.
So
show me your mind, I'll show you. Show me. How is it? Show me
I'm like, you
your
better finish
mind,
that
I'll show
sentence.
you my mind. No, yes. Well, I mean, it's the same. It's the same thing. Are we editing this at all?
No.
Okay, just checking everybody.
No. This is This is way too good to edit.
Well, and also I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea, but also I want people to get an idea.
Yeah,
you know what
that's
I mean?
cool.
We want to see their minds and share ours with them. So
I'm we'll start wrapping it up because this has been a really good conversation, and I like lots of rabbit trails and touching on different topics, whatever it is. So I really enjoyed it. One thing that I want to look at is, what's your schedule? Like, how often are you posting? What's your plan for that? Because I noticed, like, I had a conference call yesterday that I was jumping on, and like 10 minutes before I saw you come on, I'm like, I'm gonna watch this real quick, and then it would like, I gotta get off and go, but
We're kind of on a squirrel schedule right now.
okay, cool.
Like that.
Oh, all right, yeah.
So it's really just
Turn the notifications on in the group, and people will see it.
and
it's Mondays is what it's going to be, but but we're just every day right now as we see needs, getting putting that survey out there, which we've only had a couple people respond to, but
I haven't seen it yet. Okay.
I have a feeling that once coronavirus hits our community, more will fill that out. So it's been every day so far, but it really, when there's not a pandemic going on, it will be Mondays.
Okay, great.
Mondays are the days that I could commit to.
Oh, good for you. That's good.
Monday works for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we film all throughout the week, and then we try to post on Wednesdays. Generally, but I'll post this one tonight, just because it's good and it's timely with the
You're
needs.
working so hard, goodness.
Yeah, thank you for what you're doing.
It's all good.
Too.
Yeah. Well, and we didn't. One of the things I'll say about sustainable development is that I think that there's going to be a big shift in how communities operate and are developed in the future, to allow more multi-generational, to allow, I think the form of construction will change a little bit. I think we're about to see that industry completely disrupted in the next 5 years. Because we've just had one basic model for 50 plus years on basic model. Like there's been huge advances, technology, skill, how things are built and all that kind of stuff, but there hasn't been a major disruption to the building industry. And we might be in the middle of it, who knows? But I think that we're going to see some big changes in that. And I think this concept of, and I think it will be more focused on livable design in how homes are being built. And I think we'll also see, because, you can't, that's a whole nother conversation.
It's just I'm such a
relational
nerd
social
for it.
functionality in
I'll
our
give you a
living
book. I'll give you a book.
stuff.
A friend of mine, who's an architect in California, wrote a book this last year called Livable Design, and it's excellent. It just stirs some things up in you.
Yeah.
Can we get that book? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's online. Livable Design by Jeffrey Demure, Demure. And in fact, I'll probably end up doing a Zoom breakdown with him to talk about it at some point. So yeah, it's really good. And I think that the form of land ownership is going to change for most communities, because it's no longer going to be sustainable or affordable to maintain the current model. And so, either that or we won't have any free space left.
Right.
Because we are growing, and in our community we're just sprawling, which is
we
because
we like it.
We have
we don't-
space,
we
but
don't
let's
wanna
not fill
hide.
it
We
all
don't
up,
want-
you
yeah,
guys.
yeah.
I mean, I don't mean it like
it's
that,
tough.
but
It's tough, and we want to maintain the character of the communities, but I think that in the next 5 years we're going to see a dramatic shift in what development looks like.
And what is the balance in that? Because my nephew, he's a forester. He's the other one who we want to get up in podcasting as well. We want 3 new shows. I'll put a little plug in there. One's an outdoor adventure, one is Karita and I, and one is my nephew and niece, and she's Mrs. Coeur d'Alene 2019.
Whoop, whoop.
And he's a forester, and he said that, and here's where I like having all different sides, because he's very conservative, and he says that the best maintained forests are those who are maintained in the private industry. I mean, you want to stop fires with.
down.
Let me just
You want to stop fires with.
What?
take a sip. Some people wouldn't agree with that. I go, yeah.
Oh, I know, but he's a professional who's been in the industry for years and knows what he's talking about. And when it comes to fire prevention, the most fires that they have are on federal lands.
Yeah.
However, like my partner brought up, he said, yeah, but that's because there's more federal land. So, that let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's
yeah,
talk.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah,
that's
and that's what we're doing.
I grew up Democrat and thought, was raised in Spokane and in the public school system there. The only presidents we ever heard about were Democrats. I didn't even know of a single name other than Abraham Lincoln of a Republican president. And I grew up under Ronald Reagan. I didn't even know he was a Republican. I only heard of Democrat. So that's what
You knew he was an actor.
Yeah, and gullible idiot at best. Right,
Oh,
That was what you were.
that's what I understood.
That's what you understood. Sure.
In the 80s. But it was very interesting because when I moved to North Idaho, I'm like, man, there's all this pro-timber propaganda. Because I didn't have a grid for the timber industry at all. All I had heard was that trees, people who chop down trees are bad. That's all I heard growing up.
Right.
So it's like, oh, of course now I'm like, whoop, I've kind of flipped over to a whole different kind of mindset.
Chopping down your own trees now.
I know. I've had to
do
educate
not have
myself
an opinion.
a lot.
I just listen to the experts and ask
I figure,
them questions.
I'm just going to put a warning on this episode that we will poke your favorite issue today, whether it's politics or religion or trees or what.
I'm just answering
just
questions.
be warned.
I'm not
It's
suggesting
coming.
any topics. I'm just sitting here.
Just be warned.
This one I am not an expert on, but I do want to get to the solution.
Well,
to
I think
fire
it's great.
prevention,
Yeah, I think it's great to
that's
have
gonna
more of
be.
those conversations. It's
Yeah,
good.
I love what Idaho Forest Group is doing. I do love that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, when trees burn, they lose money.
right.
That's a
yeah,
whole different
and when they
federal
have
laws, doesn't it?
disease, they lose money.
Yep.
And yeah.
Yep.
Well,
So-
and being married to a firefighter and just kind of thinking about fire and how it works and just learning, and my knowledge is limited, but there's things that could be done to help that.
I agree.
That
Yeah.
aren't thought through, I think, well
Yeah.
enough.
Yep. Well, we're this show is not here to tickle anybody's ears. We just want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And so
No,
appreciate it.
in my head, I'm thinking of everybody who's going to be like, Sandy, why did you say that?
Well, see, that's why
But
we
I
get you
don't-
in this cozy little studio.
Yeah.
We put on some dim lights.
It's very
and we-
disarming.
yeah,
Thank you,
try
Chris.
to- You forgot there were microphones in a camera.
I'm like,
That's
oh,
so great.
My nephew said it. I didn't say it. I don't know.
Well, and then here's the deal. You're entitled to have your opinion. I think
Absolutely.
we already covered this as long as it's respectful.
Yeah.
I don't.
And
Yeah, we're not bashing anybody.
Yeah, we're not. And we're entitled to have our own free thinking process
Yep.
in a way that's
And if you
not
don't
damaging
agree
to
with
other
us,
people.
come on our show or Chris's show.
Go to Chris's show.
No, come on. I want you on my
Karita's
show
gonna say,
too.
like, I ain't doing it.
No, we welcome it.
Because I don't show up with an agenda.
Yeah.
I'm not here to score political points or convert people. Like, I just want to find out where you're at, and I'll give you my thoughts, and let's talk about it. So that's great. Anybody. And I have put out there multiple times. Who do you guys want to hear from? Who do you want to see? And so one of yours came up on one of them. Everyone else, I have reached out to everybody that's been suggested. If they're not on the show, you go call them and say, get back a hold of Chris and get on the show. So,
Okay,
there you
gotcha.
go. So, and if you guys have people that you want to recommend to shoot over, send them over.
And part of the reason I want to do my niece and nephew is because they are probably the other side of the spectrum
Sure.
from me and
Okay.
Karita. And so I want to bring all sides, to something.
That's
and
great.
and so they will give, a balance to Karita and I hope,
Mm-hmm.
because we tend to be debaucherous.
We're here to bring balance to the force.
Yeah,
Balance
so-
to the debauchery.
Yeah, and then the outdoor adventuring is really to it almost like every time I watch, the little documentary we did at the beginning of this of the kokanee, it's just like relaxing, and it reminds you what we all love about this place.
Yeah, come on.
So
That's
that'll
great.
be fun. Yeah.
That's great. So how do people get in contact with you? What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they have questions, information, want to be on your show?
I'll let my IT person.
You can email me, Sandi at, oh gosh, my email's so long. Sorry, guys. It's
So if I was going to search you on Facebook, what would I search?
Oh, you could search Inland Northwest for Sustainable Development.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Or Educated Debauchery, which is under
Debauchery.
that if you want to be
Great.
a guest on the show or you have a suggestion.
Great.
We like suggestions also.
Great. So as I recommend people do with the Bonner Breakdown, if you like the show, share it, follow, like it, subscribe, make sure if, whatever your method is, get notifications, especially with live streams, because, I hate when I go to my phone and I missed it and I'm like, oh, that thing will be back later. I'm like, I missed it. So I'm always, when I get
live stream, I always share it afterwards, so you can go back to
Great.
it. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And then
Sometimes I get lost.
And then email me even so we're a multimedia platform, but we are also project based.
Okay.
So those two things. So definitely email me, Sandi at inlandnorthwestsustainabledevelopment.com. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I think we're good.
Thank you,
Chris,
for
so
having us.
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you, Anna Lee, for helping us.
Yeah.
Back
Whoop, whoop.
there. Give her a plug too.
Yeah,
Producer.
come on, she rocks it. She rocks it. So, great. And any last questions?
No, but thank you so much for also stepping up for to come alongside us and help us with what we're focused on right now.
Encourage
Cool.
us. Your
come on.
encouragement is
Go get it.
welcomed. Thank
Go
you.
get it.
Thank
Go
you.
get it. Don't let the distraction slow you down.
Thank
Right?
you. Yeah.
So,
Yes.
all right. Cool. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Bonner Breakdown. Special thanks to Ting and BCHA for sponsoring this show. For more shows or to be a guest, please visit bonnerbreakdown.com. Have a great day.